Okay, as my new filming location, a supermarket car park. Today I want to talk about basically what's the ultimate currency, and that's trust. So, being self-employed, I run into very rarely, fortunately, but I will run into the problem of non-payers. And I've completed a job. Fortunately, these are all low-ticket jobs too. And yeah, they just don't pay me. They don't respond, and I'm left with the choice: do I go to small claims court? Do I knock on their door? Do I send them increasingly angry messages? And most of the time, I haven't done a job where it's been worth it. If I did a high ticket job, I probably would pursue small claims court, and that's basically because the whole economy and society is built on trust. Money, physical money, virtual money, as it appears on your phone screen, on your online banking, it's not worth anything. It's only worth something because you trust that the bank has the gold reserves or whatever assets that give that money the value. Um, yeah, I mean, everyone knows that it's just paper, but because you trust that it's worth something, because you're trusting an institution at that point. But it goes down to the individual level where you would trust someone to pay you after you've done a job, an agreed, job. And without that, things get very strange because you could do direct barter, and you would have to do that under force basically. You would have to barter, and then you would have to have a pointy stick, and they would have to have a pointy stick. And if anyone didn't meet their end of the agreement, you would have to hold them accountable, or in the worst case, force them to come through basically with by using it. It would all come down to physical force. So we're very fortunate that we live in the West, particularly. There's enough trust in. We have a high trust society, and that means we don't have to resort to rule by cartel, for instance, where you would pay a protection racket, and they would basically by force, because they have the monopoly on violence, much like a smaller version, a smaller, slightly less accountable version of government. They would use that to make sure things are kind of running smoothly, because even for a cartel, if everyone's fucking each other over and fighting each other over who owns, someone said they would do this and didn't pay up, even a cartel on that level ceases to be able to function. So yeah, it really makes it sink in how as soon as that trust goes, you can't have services. To buy a good, as in goods and services, to buy something, you would have to physically present something of equal value, because you wouldn't be able to trust that the money is worth that. You wouldn't be able to, and you would have to have that, you'd have to have someone with a gun standing over and arbitrating in case both people fuck each other over. So it quickly destroys everything. The foundation of all of society basically can just evaporate, and we'll be back to, you're never going to get a team of scientists and engineers to deliver on a project or innovate something if they're worried that someone's going to come along and steal it from, steal their intellectual property, for instance, or they just won't get paid for all the work they've put in. Things. It's really easy just to see how quickly things can spiral out of control. Which brings me to my dilemma. Bear in mind, this job was £12.50, and obviously there's some ego investment too. On a personal level, this guy's looked me in the eye, asked me to do something, and stolen my labour from me. And he's, I met him, and he's talked to him for a little bit, and he's decided not he's decided he's going to fuck me over, basically. And I thought, should I pursue it in a small claims court? Because if no one holds these people accountable, if there's a critical mass of people like this, do they, how long before society unravels if this behavior is not kind of punished? And punished is the right word, because there is something childish and short-sighted about it. And I do think I would say a person of a certain IQ level, there's only, that you're very limited in how you can get through to them. Not that I would really expect to get through to him or change his behavior, because he was also, late 50s maybe. He's probably gone through his whole life like that. And that's the other thing. I do think it showed. It was a very dingy flat. It was a ground floor, quite dingy flat in a very kind of bleak housing estate. And yeah, the windows were really filthy. So obviously it's not something they care about, in the sense that it's probably not something they would pay someone to do, which is quite funny. Also, he had a very overweight wife who was shouting at a cat, and then turned into the house and started shouting at him. So I do think, to get biblical a second, you shall know them by their fruits. And this, he's not someone to be envious of, to put it bluntly, which helped me kind of be less annoyed at him, because I just thought, I think karma has visited this man already. There's nothing I can do at this point that'll be worse than being him, which sounds petty and enlightened at the same time, but it's true. It's it's just like how I feel regarding that type of person in general. So another example, I've had a customer that I've dropped. So this is a very good one. So he would always pay on the same day or the day after, and even send a screenshot of the bank transfer. One day, a traveling roof cleaner showed up outside his house with no, I assume he knocked on the door, no company markings or anything. And yeah, not like a traveller. He doesn't live in any set area. And he cleaned this guy's roof, and all the dirt and moss he blasted off, he didn't clean any of that up. He said to this guy, also showering all the neighbours' gardens with moss too. And he just said to this guy, "Oh no, that's your job," and left. And because he's a traveller and he paid cash, he's gone now, and it'd be very, very hard to get some sort of to be able to resolve that now. So he was victim of a low trust, someone acting out of low trust in a very me versus them worldview. I was paid to do the cleanup operation for his conservatory roof, some of the garden and the windows. And so I did this, and it took him 3 weeks to pay me. And his reasoning was he was busy. And I've cleaned this guy's windows before. I've seen him sat in his conservatory on his vape, looking at his phone. So if he's obviously got the time. So he called me quite urgently, like saying it was quite an urgent thing to get cleaned up, because his neighbours weren't very happy with him. And then it became so he called me. I responded quickly. I had a relatively free day, so I actually booked in quite quick and responded quickly. So on my end, I've delivered. I've done everything by the books. I've done a really good job, and I've done it quickly and responsively. And then it took him 3 weeks to pay. Bear in mind, before that, he had been a really good payer. He'd always been this, probably. Yeah, it'd always been the same day. It would be on a Friday. It would always be at the end of the day on a Friday or a Saturday morning at the very latest. He would send it through. Um, so yeah, and his reasoning was he was really busy, so he didn't have time to pay me. So he didn't have time to go on his banking app for 5 minutes, especially after having the time to book the work in, me putting the time aside to do it. And yeah, so obviously there's on one level the ego gets in there as well, and I think rightly so, because that's very disrespectful on a personal level. But it seemed like he had almost been, it's almost like a contagion, and he had this, someone's fucked him over down the line, and now he's gone from being a really good customer, maybe being exposed to a bad tradesman. On some level, he's thinking, oh, these tradesmen are, this negative karma's kind of made its way to me, maybe. So eventually he did pay, and I decided, because he'd always been a good payer before, and at the end of the day, he's paying me to do more work and extra add-on jobs. So I still came out, financially better off from this. So yeah, then I decided to do the next window clean, and I did it, and a week later he hasn't paid me. So I send a message again prompting him. I said, I hope everything's okay. Are you able to send payment through? And he did. Very quickly after receiving that text. But in my mind, I'm thinking, why has he gone from paying so quickly to now taking a week? And again, just the excuse of being too busy to pay someone for a job they've done for you after agreeing. And now, was he too busy to do that again? And I thought to myself, if it's the case that he's too busy to send payment, obviously that's the kind of customer I want to run away from, just screaming with my hands in the air, like, oh God, this is worse than someone who tells me to fuck off at the door. They're doing me a favor, but someone like this who would be like all friendly and then not pay me is way worse than a rude person. So yeah, based on that, I'm not, obviously I've knocked him off the list. I'm not doing any more work for him. But it just goes to show the erosion of trust. So yeah, he's been screwed over on some level. Then for whatever reason, that's kind of trickled down to me, and I wasn't screwed over in the end because he did pay me, but obviously alarm bells are going off in my head, like, has he decided just not to pay me? And that was that was not an insignificant amount too. So I don't know if I would have pursued that at a small claims court, but it's right on the borderline. It really is. I probably would have, just to hold him accountable. But yeah, fortunately I didn't have to, and he's paid up, so he's not indebted in any way. But the trust is now gone because of those events, and so I'm no longer willing to provide him a service, and he's no longer able to get one because the currency of trust has evaporated. And yeah, so I mean, if there's a takeaway, I would say just to value that trust. And if you've got a business and you've got good, reliable, regular payers, just make sure they know they're valued, because that is the ultimate value. They can have all the money in the world and all the potential work, but if they're not going to come through, then they're worse than non-existent. They're worse than just a rude person who tells you to fuck off, because at the end of the day, they'll leech from your time and energy, and you won't get anything back, and it'll make you more cynical too. Okay, yeah, fuck it. I'm going to go on a bit more of a tangent. So this applies really well in the dating world too. with ghosting, for instance. And so if someone, it's a really common thing now, especially in the world of online dating, where someone will maybe like they'll get into something with someone on the apps, and for whatever reason they'll be ghosted. Maybe after several dates, maybe after like months. I mean, it happens. I've heard I've heard stories, uncorroborated stories of people seeing each other for like 6 months plus, and then someone just ghosts, and that erodes the trust, and it makes people less willing to invest and put themselves out there and have. They call it emotional vulnerability. I think that's a misnomer, but it's that kind of, they don't want to be vulnerable. Obviously, by doing that and closing themselves off, they've made themselves more vulnerable. They've taken a bigger loss than anyone else could have given them. But yeah, they kind of they become closed off and jaded, and they might become a feminist, or get into the manosphere content, and just view other people as pretty, just kind of mean or degenerates, or there's so many stories. One particularly for men is that like women can move on faster than men, or because they've got so much access to easy, like, just sex from the apps, they will value it less, and they will do things like, one is they'll build a conglomeration of all their partners, the best bits of all of them in their head, and then hold people to this standard. So it's just, all these stories go around, and generally, I'm just trying to be nice how I phrase it, but generally, like, stories are for losers, in that you're taking all these losses and you need some sort of narrative to explain it, and so you lose your scientific rigor, and you can start to form a story to explain the lack of success. And it could be Western women are cooked. It could be, I mean, I've had funny ones. I've talked about this before, but people in bungalows don't because they can reach their windows, they don't want window cleaners, because I've had bad days of door knocking around bungalows, and your brain just comes up with a story. But if I was winning, constantly winning, I wouldn't, a story wouldn't develop. The only story that would develop, and does develop on a good day, is I kind of, two stories. One, I'm really good at going door to door, and I must be special in like a positive way. And the other story is basically, I don't know how to phrase it. It's basically, if I hit a good area, it's kind of over and done with, like all she wrote kind of thing. Like, especially if you have a few slow days and you hit a good area and you pick up loads of people. That's the story that develops, and that one's more actually from more experience, and it holds a lot more weight than me just being special somehow. Obviously, I do a fairly good job, and I've done it enough that I probably am better than. I mean, I'm a lot better than someone who's never done it before. So, and in the same sense with dating, once you get to a level where you're not taking losses all the time, you no longer have the need to form these narratives. So yeah, like, just going back to forming narratives, and then going back to the whole trust dynamic, you'll form these narratives and stories to protect yourself, because your trust has been betrayed in the past, and now there's a whole dating world, a whole dating pool full of people who might have negative beliefs, and they don't mean to, but they'll end up playing more and more of a zero-sum game because that's what they believe it to be. And then that trickles down, and yeah, eventually kind of trust erodes across on a societal level, and then things start to look more and more bleak. It's, yeah, the economy can only take so much erosion of trust, and I mean, men and women in large numbers can only do that. And you can argue even now, you would have, say, like the 4Bs movement in South Korea, and you'd have like a big kind of feminist movement. I don't know the specifics, but I imagine they're not too like rosy on men. And now the birth rate in South Korea rather has, I think it's the lowest in the world now. And speaking of North Korea, I mean, you know, the North Koreans won't even have to invade South Korea in 50 years or so. They can just walk across the border and there'll be no one left, because that erosion of trust. So it's really stark, actually. If you look at it like that, it's, you can have I mean, I've never been, and you can have what's called a communist dictatorship, and then somehow, probably because in that cartel fashion they're enforcing social contracts for better or worse, they're enforcing things. You haven't had the breakdown of trust, and yeah, they're kind of ticking along. It's probably not very nice over there, but they're not having a complete demographic like washout collapse. So yeah, I mean, a breakdown of trust in society, and no sort of, you know, like no, all the social contracts just evaporating, and no strong kind of like dictator to, at least a dictator to enforce some sort of cartel, like accountability to keep things somewhat functioning. It's, you know, you can see it's on one level, on a Darwinian sense at least, it's worse than, yeah, Kim Jong. I'm not sure who's in power over there now, but yeah, it's worse than anything a so-called dictatorship could throw at a population, if the population doesn't, you know, ceases to exist. So yeah, it's fucking it's a big deal, and that's why I considered going to small claims court over a £12.50 window cleaning job. I didn't in the end, because the time taken to do that, I could just knock doors, and you know, the time to actually go to small claims court, I could easily pick up probably like 10, 20 new customers in the time it took to do that anyway. And I couldn't even be bothered to drive over and knock on their door and be like, is everything okay? Are you able to pay me? And see if they had the balls to tell me no in person. Yeah, it's just not worth it, fortunately. But yeah, it's something to keep an eye on, and it's something that I'll definitely take seriously, because as much more relaxing or even pragmatic it could be to let go of these things, there are, without going back to the dating topic, there are ways to mitigate this without being closed off or jaded. And same with customers, there are ways to mitigate this by, ironically, usually by charging more. And so you scare off, because the type of people who are willing to pay a lot are also, one, they've got the money, and anyone who's kind of built wealth usually doesn't play a short-term zero-sum game, because there's no way you could rise it for a corporation consistently doing that kind of thing. I think politics are probably maybe the only kind of field where people can climb very high through playing a zero-sum game, basically. So yeah, fuck it. I'll go on another it's not yeah, well, is it a tangent? I don't know. So then, if you're looking at ways to kind of, so some really good ways I can in my services business avoid these kind of people is something I'm putting into effect, phasing in, is doing go cardless bank, go cardless direct debit transactions, and they're not even. I still do the cleaning, and the direct debit isn't even sent through. It processes, I think, 5 days 5 days after I've done the job. But I do the job, and then I basically activate it, and in 5 days' time, it's taken from their account. And yeah, obviously they're still signing up for something on some level, and they could cancel it, but I'm still able to bill from their account. So actually, I'm asking them to trust me a bit more on a level. I can do that because yeah, I've been doing this for a while. I know I'm reliable, and I do a good job, and I've got enough Google reviews, and yeah, like basically just Google reviews to prove that I'm somewhat reliable and good. So, and then it's actually saving them a job too, but it does kind of trigger that feeling of like, oh, I'm signing up. This guy can feasibly like take money from my account now. And if you're a low trust individual who has that zero sum game mentality, that's a massive no-no, because if they were let into someone's account, they might know on a level they might take more than they should. So because that's how they think I must be trying to screw them over, and that scares them off. Another thing that scares people off too is more ones that don't value the service is a first clean charge. Even you can even put on a small one, but the fact that you're charging a little bit more upfront, and you're even telling them, I don't even try and dress it up. I tell them I'll charge more on the first clean, because I think it scares people off who don't value the service, and two, even if they thought, oh, I'll sign up, I'll sign up for recurring clean, I'll get them to do it once and then I'll cancel, thus avoiding the the higher price of an ad hoc clean that is about twice the rate, because they're just not it's not something you can really build a business on, because even at twice the rate, they might that might be 50 quid, and I don't have the sort of efficiency of lead generation where I could even think about spending money just to generate £50 jobs. So yeah, that's that aside. It'll scare those kind of customers off, and I do the same. I do the same dating, not to not in the same way like I was trying to scare off people that would fuck me over, but it's more about kind of saving time and not investing in weeks of conversations and messages back and forth to finally ask her out and be ghosted. Then I get ghosted on the second message I send, or the first. The first is I'm looking for something basically casual and working on a bedroom bucket list. So obviously that's going to scare a lot of people off. And then the next one is basically saying what's on that list. So that's going to scare off people who aren't in, who wouldn't have the chemistry with me. It's super like normal and vanilla anyway. It's not like some crazy niche. So that's not really where the filtering comes through. The filtering comes through the fact that I'm so upfront, and there's no sort of question of, they're under no illusions that I'm going to promise them a nice dinner and flowers, and then if I do all that kind of performative nonsense, then maybe I could have some sex as a reward. There's no they're under no illusion of what my plan is, what I want basically, and what I'm looking for. So yeah, that level of just honesty can scare. First of all, it filters really efficiently and really quickly. Secondly, yeah, it will scare off it will scare off girls. I've been asked like, what's the catch? And I'm like, what do you mean, what's the catch? Like, fucking's fun. Like, what more do I have to explain? And yeah, some are even dubious I'll actually follow through, like, which is also hilarious to me, because like, why the fuck wouldn't I follow through? That sounds like a really good time. So yeah, this kind of like level of honesty it is a very good job of kind of, I'm never gonna find myself strung along for sex, basically, because I've just been like this. You know, that's kind of not like the you know, that's kind of that's not just a means to an end. That's pretty much the goal. Or, you know, right now that I'm doing right now, that would change more during a relationship. But I'll just say the same thing. Like, if it's some, you know, I could just say, let's build a bedroom bucket list and a bucket list of fun things to do together outside of that too. But make it explicitly like clear that that's like a big deal. And yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, yeah, well, yeah, I just think of like personal like preferences and how that would look. So, but not to get too distracted. So, yeah, I mean, a girl who would be wanting maybe just to keep you kind of like orbiting her for kind of validation, or like, yeah, just make her feel better about herself, or has no kind of intention of meeting up, or, you know, would say like want a free meal, that none of that's possible. um there's no, you know, it's kind of yes or no, are you into this? And they might be thinking it's some sort of 4D chess, and I'm some sort of like genius 4D chess master, but I'm not. I'm just using the apps as I want to use them, basically, and it's like a fun and engaging way to do it. And yeah, because I mean, personally, I talking about talking about like what someone does for work is, it's okay in person, and it can be interesting if they've got an interesting job or if they're passionate about it. But over a message, that kind of thing's so asinine and such a fucking like boring topic. You know, that's never. I would never like go into that. And yeah, because I'm so upfront, I'm never really expected to either. They're just like, well, this guy's interested in one thing, and it's disgusting. And I don't know if anyone ever said that to me. I'd probably just say like, don't call yourself disgusting. um, but yeah, that aside, so, you know, you can. I'm still putting myself out there, and I'm fucking delivering. Like, I'll put a lot of work in a sense, to like make sure we both have a really good time, and I'm communicating well and everything. And I'm, you know, it's not like it's meaningless for me. I'm even looking for um ongoing like friends with benefits, I would call it. So I'm not being, I'm scaring people off in much the same way I'm scaring off people, customers I don't want. I'm scaring off women I probably wouldn't get along with, and I'm able to do it in a way that's not kind of jaded or too closed off, because I can basically just go balls to the wall, and like full honesty, and know that's kind of a protection almost from time wasters, or people playing that zero sum game, and people who have that short term low conscientiousness nature. Because maybe not so much the low conscientiousness with the apps and the women, but yeah, I'm never going to be the guy who promises a relationship and then uses that to like weasel into sex. I'm never going to be that guy again, at least. Um, so yeah, because of that, like you don't run into these annoying. You run into these annoying situations less and less, and the good experiences outweigh the irritating ones so much. You don't hit this burnout, and you don't build up this cynicism. And at least on my end, I know that if there's a breakdown in the economy or dating from an erosion of trust, it's I haven't carried that negative energy forward myself, and at least I haven't contributed to that. So with when the apocalypse comes and everyone's killing each other, it wasn't my fault.